I can already tell I'm just gonna rant for like an hour. I'm gonna have to edit this video down so much. Here we go. Hey, hi, hello, how are we? How is everyone doing today? I hope everyone's having an amazing day. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you guys don't know me, my name is Maya. I just started posting videos here on YouTube. I live in New York City. You can watch my welcome to my channel video if you want to know more about me. But anyway, today I am making a video that I've been really excited to make for a while now. And it is the 6 things you need to know before moving to New York City. These are essentially the things that I wish I knew. I wish I had a friend to tell me. I wish I reached out to people and asked about and all that jazz. So here I am as your friend telling you all the things that I wish I knew when I first moved here. Essentially, I have 6 things that I've written out on a very detailed Google Doc that I'm gonna go through with you guys. And I have 6 topics that are kind of like overarching things, and then I'll go more into detail about each of those 6 things as we go. Okay, so the first one's gonna feel a little bit obvious, but I'll explain, and it's visit first. So the main point of the visit first advice is to figure out your living situation. Now, I don't mean that you need to come to New York and find an apartment and then 3 months later you need to move into that apartment, because frankly, that's not how New York real estate works. But when you visit, I want you to imagine yourself actually living there. Get an idea of what day-to-day life is like. Obviously, you wouldn't be visiting and like working at the job that you would necessarily be working at when you do move to New York, but you can walk around, kind of try to live like a local. Don't do all of the touristy things that a lot of people do when they first visit New York City. While you're there, you should try to talk to locals, whether that's people that you already know that live there or random people that you meet in a coffee shop. If you can find anybody friendly enough that actually wants to talk to you, just don't come off too touristy. But you want to ask the locals what it's like to live there, what they do, what their day-to-day looks like, and if they have any advice for you when it comes to living there, moving there, any of the different neighborhoods that they have experience in, all that good stuff. During your time there, you want to scope out all the different neighborhoods that you could potentially be living in. There are 5 different boroughs in New York City. That's Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. So depending on where you want to spend your time is where you're going to want to live. I would assume that most people moving here are going to either live in Brooklyn, Manhattan, or Queens. But you also have the option to live in Jersey, which I know sounds weird because it's another state, but it's like a 10-minute train ride, and a lot of New Yorkers actually do live in Jersey. When it comes to Manhattan, there are a lot of different neighborhoods and areas that you could potentially live, work, or spend time in, and I do later on want to do a more in-depth video about all of the neighborhoods in Manhattan or New York in general, but if I do that right now, this video will be 3 hours long and nobody wants to watch that, and I frankly don't want to make it right this second. So I'll give you a little bit of a rundown. Basically, in Manhattan, you could be downtown, in Midtown, or uptown. And then you could also either be on the east side or the west side. There are a ton of different neighborhoods within all of those different areas, and some of them are more expensive or less expensive than others. But what you really need to know is that it's all super expensive in comparison to Brooklyn, Queens, or Jersey, which are the other main areas that I'm going to focus on you potentially moving to. When it comes to downtown Manhattan, that's a popular area for young people to move in, but it is more expensive. So with those neighborhoods, you would be talking about the East Village, the Lower East Side. You could even do the Financial District, Greenwich Village, West Village, Chelsea, Soho, all of those types of areas. When it comes to uptown, you're mostly usually talking about the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side, and those are more family and residential areas, like people usually refer to it as. And then there's Midtown, which is usually known for being pretty touristy. That's where you're gonna find Times Square, Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center, all of that kind of stuff, and then a lot of office buildings. So a lot of people work in Midtown. Now, if you don't necessarily want to live in Manhattan, you could also look into living in Brooklyn, which is a really popular place for people to live. There's some still really expensive neighborhoods in Brooklyn that are pretty much equivalent to the price of living in Manhattan, like Williamsburg or Park Slope. And then there's also more affordable options like Bed-Stuy or Bushwick. Living in Brooklyn is usually going to be a little more convenient for the people that work or spend time in downtown or midtown Manhattan. And then I would say living in Queens is a little bit more reasonable for people that spend time in uptown or midtown, just because of the way that all the trains work. It's usually the easiest way to get to those places. But in Queens, you could be talking about living in Astoria or Long Island City. Now, when it comes to living in Jersey, people are usually talking about living in Hoboken or Jersey City. And those are actually pretty close to downtown / midtown Manhattan. But one thing that you do have to keep in mind is that you have to take the path, which is essentially like the subway. It just is going to Jersey, and you can use your Metro card on it, but sometimes it requires a separate card. That's a little difficult to explain, but it'll make sense when you actually look into it. The main thing to keep in mind when picking a neighborhood to live in is what makes the most sense for you. Now, that's going to include a lot of different factors as far as your budget for rent and how expensive all the things around your living space are, like grocery stores and regular food takeout, as well as keeping in mind how far the commute to work would be, where your friends live, and things like that. So really, it's a super individual decision, and wherever you end up, you'll be able to make the best of it, but it is also a really important decision. You do have to keep in mind that when you decide to pay for location, as in paying for the most ideal neighborhood for you, your rent is gonna be a lot higher, and you're probably gonna be settling for a not so perfect apartment that includes some inconveniences. That means it might be smaller, a little older, and probably not the best, but sometimes people decide to value location over their actual living space, and that's up to you. You also want to keep in mind whether you're going to sublease or sign a year-long lease. Now, signing a year-long lease is more expensive, but it does have some benefits as far as you have your own space and you have more security. However, subleasing can be really nice and convenient too, especially for people that are just starting to move here, because it gives them an idea to test out the neighborhood they might want to live in and have like a temporary living situation while they kind of get their feet under them. If you do want to consider subleasing, I would suggest going on Facebook and joining different Facebook pages such as Gypsy Housing, or you could even just go in the search bar and search NYC sublease, and there's going to be a bunch of pages that come up. I do always recommend getting a signed written agreement when it comes to getting a sublease, because sometimes people will have you just Venmo them the rent rather than actually signing on to the lease, and that can get a little bit sketchy even though it sounds convenient at first. So just be careful with that. Next up on overarching topics of things that you need to know is how much money you actually need to move here. Now, this number may seem a little bit shocking, so make sure you're sitting down, but to actually apply for an apartment, get approved, move in, do first month's rent, a security deposit, potentially a broker's fee, I would estimate you need anywhere between $3,500 and $4,000. Now, that's just for the move-in process. That doesn't include furniture or groceries when you first move in, or just any of the regular expenses of life. So two things to keep in mind are just how much your regular expenses are going to be, and the financial diet is actually a really good resource that you can use to kind of figure out a budget. And then there's also just a million other budgeting resources that you can look at here on YouTube or on Google. Next thing you need to keep in mind is that if you are starting a new job when you first move here, you have to remember that with the way that payroll works, when you first join a company, you don't actually get paid until your third week of working. It takes 1 week for them to process you as a new employee and get you onto the payroll, and then your actual payroll is a 2-week long period. So that means you're most likely not gonna get paid until the third week that you start your job, unless you do get paid for every single week, and then it might be the second week, but just try to play it safe and consider it might not be until the third or fourth week. That means you do need to save up a lot of money when you first move here. The more, the better, obviously, because you want to rather be safe than sorry, and it can be really overwhelming when you first move here. So make sure you have a good amount of money saved up and a cushion to rely on just in case. The next thing to consider is probably one of the most intimidating things about living in New York, and it's figuring out the subway system. Figuring out the subway system is something that you don't necessarily have to do before you move here, but it is something that you should consider and start doing as soon as you get here. Being on the subway is the most convenient way to travel. Taking a car, a taxi, and Uber is just really not convenient. And also, side note, don't bring a car to New York unless you live far out in Brooklyn or Queens or wherever. I really wouldn't recommend it, especially if you live in Manhattan. You're gonna wanna use the subway to get almost anywhere and everywhere, and so figuring it out is gonna be crucial to your life. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it's not the easiest thing in the world to understand, but eventually it does make sense. We've all had our fair share of getting on the wrong train, being on the right train and thinking you're on the wrong train and getting off and then missing your train or whatever it may be. It's just part of the process. But when you first move here, one of my biggest tips is to just use Google Maps all the time. The transit is really clear on there, and you can use the little arrow when it shows you like which way you're pointing to figure out if you're going north, south, east, or west. Now, because Manhattan runs on a grid system, you're gonna wanna try to figure out the grid system as fast as possible, and paying attention to where you're going when you're going there is the easiest way to do that. There are different apps that you can use, such as City Mapper, but I also think Google Maps was really good and does the job for sure. However, City Mapper is really nice because it shows you an offline map, so if you don't have any data when you're below ground in the subway, you're fine. Another thing I did when I first moved here was take a screenshot of the map of the subway system. That way, if I don't have data or I just need to pull it up really quick, I can just go into my photos and look at that map. I just favorited it so I can access it super quickly, and it has been a lifesaver. I can't even count how many times. Something that actually shocks a lot of people when they first move here is realizing that Manhattan is only about 13 miles long. So normally when you're going uptown or downtown or your friend asks you to meet them for dinner, you're probably only going like 3 miles, but you're gonna get used to it probably taking around an hour to get there. That's not always. Sometimes the subway can get you there in 15 minutes, but sometimes it takes 3 different train connections and an hour to get there, and you just get used to it and it just turns out to be fine. So don't get too overwhelmed when you see that like it takes forever to get everywhere and you don't know how you're ever gonna do it, because it ends up working out. Don't worry. Next up is the weather. Now, if you think about it, Manhattan is an island, so it makes sense that it has island-like extremes when it comes to the weather. That means it is really hot and humid in the summer and really cold and windy in the winter. One of the biggest things that I hear people say, oh my God, I could never live in New York because I don't know how I would survive the winter. And pretty much everybody thinks that when they first get here. But alas, I promise you, you will figure it out. It's probably gonna suck at first, and you're gonna need to invest in a really good coat that's really warm and a lot of layers all the time, but you'll get through it and you'll get used to it. One thing I will say that caught me really off guard when I first moved here is how much it rains, and the rain can be pretty unpredictable. I grew up in the Northeast, so I know what the weather is like, but for some reason, just in the city, the rain is so much worse. I would recommend always keeping a small umbrella in your purse or your briefcase, whatever guys carry with them, I don't know, but keep a small umbrella with you at all times and get in the habit of checking the weather before you leave the house. I know people that still to this day don't do that and are shocked when it starts raining at 4 o'clock. I just don't understand. As soon as I wake up, you can ask Alexa, you can ask Siri, or you can just pull it up on your phone. It's really easy. You'll know if it's raining or not. You can wear the right shoes. You can make sure you have an umbrella on you, and just be prepared. Next up is kind of a hard pill to swallow, but nobody ever told me this, and I wish someone did, so here you go. Moving to New York can be really lonely and difficult at first. You see the New York in the movies, you see Sex and the City and all of these iconic movies that are placed here, and you see all these people with all these friends, and you see so many like influencers on the internet doing all these cool things all the time, and it seems like it should just be so easy, and frankly, it's not. I always tell people that honestly, when I first moved here, it was the loneliest 6 months of my life. I had a couple friends, I had a good job, and there was nothing necessarily wrong, but it was just so hard. I felt like I had no money, I had no idea what I was doing, and it was just really hard. You'll find yourself spending a lot of Friday nights alone because you either can't afford to go out or don't know who to go out with or what to do, and It just can really break you down. But if you know this and you are prepared ahead of time, then you can tackle it, and I'm gonna tell you how. Sometimes making friends can be really intimidating, especially in a city where it feels like everybody knows what they're doing and they're busy and they've got their own thing going on. But I promise you, friends are out there, your people are out there, they're just waiting for you to find them. And you cannot find them unless you try and put effort in. You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You need to say yes to opportunities that you would have never done before moving here. If somebody invites you to a gallery or a museum and you aren't usually the type of person that does that kind of thing, go. If your coworkers invite you out to happy hour and you just spent 50 hours this week with them and you don't even want to look at them anymore, go anyway. Creating a larger network of social connections is how you engage with the city and figure out who you really are and who you're going to be when it comes to living in New York City. You're gonna find out a lot about yourself when you first move here. And a part of doing that is gonna be hanging out with people you wouldn't really normally hang out with, or doing things you wouldn't really normally do. This is a city with endless possibilities, and you can exist in a lot of different ways here. So just be open to new opportunity. Don't count anything out and give everything a chance. I promise you, it'll work out. You'll find your people and you won't be lonely forever. You're gonna get the hang of New York eventually. Now, the sixth and final concept that we need to talk about actually comes from one of my best friends, Catherine, who helped me a lot with this video. So shout out to Catherine. But it is the no good, very bad day. There is a day, and it comes a few months after you moved here, and it completely smashes the rose-tinted lens that you have seen New York City through. It doesn't feel magical or special or exciting. It actually feels quite like the opposite, like the city is literally trying to break you. And that's because it is. This is the day where you drop your coffee on yourself. It's raining and you have no umbrella. A taxi driver curses you out. You have $8 in your bank account. Your boss freaks out on you for no reason, and everything that could go wrong does. You're gonna spend a few weeks here and it's all gonna be fine. You're gonna be so busy figuring everything out that you don't really notice. You're just so excited to be here and everything is amazing and you're so positive and you have this great outlook on this new city that you love. And then the no good, very bad day comes. That is the moment where you figure out whether you are going to fight to live here and love it, or you're going to resent New York. And I know that sounds dramatic, and that's because it's gonna feel really dramatic in the moment. You will know when this day happens, and when it does, if you choose to handle it, that means you are choosing New York City. I always say that New York City is absolutely miserable to live in if you do not actively choose to live here and to love it. If you do not want to be here, this city is going to be really hard and you're gonna have a negative outlook on it and everything is gonna seem really shitty, honestly. But if you want to be here and you have a purpose and you actively choose to love this place, you will. If you decide that this is the place for you, then New York can and will be everything from your major motion picture fantasies. I'm not gonna lie to you because like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm gonna speak to you like a friend right now. New York can be really difficult to live in, but if you choose to live here, if you want to be here and you have a purpose, it will be everything of your dreams and more. I could go on talking about how much I love New York for hours, but I'm not gonna put you through that right now. All you need to know is that New York is one of the most amazing cities on earth, and I absolutely love it. So if you have always dreamed about moving here, take the plunge and do it. I promise you it can be so, so worth it. I hope that this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to answer more questions about New York. As I said, I love talking about this place, so let me know what you guys think. If you have any more questions, I'm planning on doing a lot more videos based on New York and everything that people wonder about it, so stay tuned, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.